Andy Wood and Craig have been chartered for some time now, and they're going to talk about their experiences and then if it was worth it. And Mike, who has been progressing with his fellow application, I believe.
Clara wanted me to do like a still on the journey piece, so I just wanted to quickly run through what my journey has been, and yeah, I guess why I'm still on it. So that's fine. So for me, I'm kind of doing the traditional academic route, so 5-year master's degree, followed by kind of moving into a consultancy with a mentor program for Chartership. So first thing was choosing the right institution. My degree is in civil and structural engineering, so kind of big choice there. Then I guess common ones for people in oil and gas is Energy Institute, and for people working in integrity is Institute of Corrosion. But for me, what I wanted to look at is how it would be reviewed by kind of the people who would want to see Chartership on my CV or on my skills list. And so it made more sense for me to stick with the Institution of Civil Engineers. The iStructI also has a 7-hour technical exam as part of the professional review, which I tried once and was not a fan of. So that's a big decider as well. So basically for the ICE, what you do for the first few years is sign off your development objectives. So I'll say at this point that Clara didn't want lots of words on the screen. So you can see here, this is just a picture. No words at all. So there's, for the ICE, there's 15 development objectives that they want you to demonstrate, basically, that you've got a broad range of skills across engineering. And what you can actually see is they're sort of grouped, and only the first kind of 4 are actually kind of pure engineering skills, like your problem solving, your technical calculations, etc. Then there's a lot based around management of projects, people, budgets, that sort of thing. 2 down the bottom are the yellow ones are personal skills and how you can communicate with others. So both just on a normal professional level, and then how you communicate like your engineering ideas to those more senior than you, those out of your field, etc. And then the blue ones at the end there are all kind of around health and safety, safe systems of work, etc. Ethics as well, your kind of personal code of conduct that you follow, as well as the final one is development, both of yourself in terms of improving your professional knowledge and everything, STEM events, and developing others, how you contribute to that. And you work your way through in stages, so it's not just I am now competent to implement solutions to problems and evaluate their effectiveness. It's gradually gaining competence, so you get appreciation and then gain knowledge and until you're kind of signed off as being competent. So I did that through the first sort of 4 years at Atkins, through, I guess, a variety of things. Sitting down with a mentor once every 3 or 6 months and kind of demonstrating to them how you think you've got better and got more competencies. So in the technical space, by doing calculations and structural analysis, using structural integrity to better my engineering judgment, that side of things. The management pieces all around, risk assessments for risk management, project management in terms of, there's a Gantt chart there, budgetary pieces, safety management by going offshore, getting site time. So basically through demonstrating all of these sorts of things, gradually showed that I was gaining competencies and signed off those 15 development objectives at the end of 2017. And then the next stage for the ICE after that is the professional review, which, as Bruce was saying, he's just gone and sat. And they're different for every different institution. But for the ICE, there's a pre-submission of a 5,000-word report that gets sent to 2 independent reviewers, along with your CPD. So it's a record of all of the learnings that you've had on the job and through formal training as well. And so then if that's accepted, if they believe that you've met all of the requirements through that submission, then you'll be invited for on-the-day training. And for me, I got as far as writing that report, the 5,000-word report, after I'd had all the development objectives signed off. And generally speaking, people will kind of split it into two sections. And so for me, I'd written the first half of the report based on general structural integrity management cycle. And that kind of covered a lot of engineering judgment, a lot of technical pieces, and a lot of kind of client engagement, all that sort of stuff. And then the second half of it was based around structural analysis, modeling, kind of quite detailed, very technical pieces, and those bit of PM work that I did when I was doing the analysis piece. And basically, after I'd written that report, it was kind of, I was having to push myself quite a bit to write the report to a point where I felt that it was kind of representative. And the question I kept coming back and asking myself was, when you go in on the day, you do an additional 15-minute presentation on a kind of smaller project or a more specific project. And then you've got 45 minutes of questions, which can be about that 15-minute presentation that you've just done, as well as general presentation interview about the whole report that you've presented as well. And at that point in time, I didn't feel that I was comfortable enough with my knowledge base in the analysis piece to be able to sit there and answer questions and kind of hold my own for 45 minutes. And so basically what I did at that point was I took a pause on the Chartership and just kind of focused on honing and refining my competencies. And I think I probably got to that point where I felt that I was at a stage where I could go back and kind of say, yeah, I'm now ready, and I feel I could answer these questions well enough and I could hold my own. But then, I'll be perfectly honest, I got very busy and didn't take the time for myself to focus on it. But what I've done over the last kind of year or so at Serica is really had quite a few projects that could definitely show up well on this report and be presented well in the 15-minute presentation, and I would feel very comfortable talking about. So I'm currently rewriting the report with the first half still around the structural integrity management from the consultancy side, and then the second half of the report around the structural integrity management from the operator side. Because even though it's kind of a similar role, there's a lot of different skills or different levels of different skills required for each part of that. So it should be an interesting report, I hope. And I also have my 15-minute presentation planned, as I will start it with a case on fell off and all of the stuff that happened in between. You know, that's a great example of, wasn't a great situation, but what it did provide for me was a single item project, which included very technical thinking, problem solving, a lot of project management and risk assessments there. And then obviously on the job learning, went out on the vessel on site as well. So there's a lot in there that kind of comes together as a small project there. So that's sort of all I wanted to talk about. It was just kind of the journey. I guess the key bit is that you know, I took that pause. I got to a point where in technicality I was ready for the next step, but then when I got there, I kind of said, do you know, I don't feel that I'm ready, and I took that pause. But now on the road again, busy writing that report.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to talk through professional registration, give you a bit of insight into it, and just talk through my journey along the way with this as well. One thing on here, this is the first time I've ever put this down, but when you become professionally registered, you can use post-nominals after your name. So when you see CEng, it means you're chartered engineer, and the second part is the institution that you are chartered through. So starting off with my background, I started an apprenticeship scheme in 1997, and that is an actual colour photo in Peterhead from 1997, 98. I did a year off the job training at a training centre at the start of my apprenticeship, and I did various courses and eventually went offshore through that time. In about 2005, I wanted to get into engineering more, so I started with agreement with SCORE. I started going back to college. Through my apprenticeship, I did an HNC. That was what you came out with at the end of your apprenticeship. So I went to college to do an HND, and I did a program called 2+2, which was 2 years at college and 2 years at university. So I did that, and I got third year entry to Aberdeen Uni, and I graduated in 2008 with a BEng honours degree. After I graduated, I bid with SCORE for a few years, and I moved to GE Oil and Gas, and sort of dipping my toe into subsea engineering. And at GE, I worked predominantly on subsea choke valves. I then moved on to JP Kenny, which is a subsea project management engineering company. I got involved with projects, various projects, and this year is actually the Forties pipeline SSIV that goes to from Apache ownership boundary to BP's. Photo on the left here is the part of the structure up at Isleburn, and this is the valve itself, and this is the actuator that goes on top. From JP Kenny, I moved on to BP, and all of my roles to this point has all been centred on valves in some shape or form. So by the time I reached BP, I had covered working at a service company, a manufacturing company, a project engineering company, and then an operator. So I've got quite a good breadth of experience with valves. The valve here on the right is actually the casting for the main oil line pig trap valves that we've got sitting in storage, and I don't know if we'll ever get them fitted. We're still trying to suss that out. Incidentally, like these valves, this was the first. This was the valves involved in my interview questions, and Craig Hodgson actually was part of my interview at BP. So since I walked in the door at BP,
so I'm to blame.
Aye. So since I walked in the door at BP, I've been involved with them all, pig trap valves. So we're still working that just now. So that's a bit about my background. So I'm going to talk more on like registration, benefits of registration. I guess the key thing for me, which is most important, is getting the recognition for your competence, your attitude, and your knowledge and understanding. And that's what being chartered, being incorporated, or an EngTech really means. It demonstrates the level that you're at to an international standard. Professional registration does help with career progression. There are certain jobs that you need to be at a certain level to take on that job, and it was certainly the case at BP to progress through the company. A lot of companies ask for this or look for people who are committed to becoming chartered. Apparently it increases earnings, so I'll find out about that next year. And being registered also demonstrates that you're continually learning. The IMechE calls it CPD, which is continual professional development. It's something that you just commit to doing, whether you're an incorporated engineer or a chartered engineer, that you'll continually develop yourself. I pointed out the professional credentials on the first slide. That's how you can demonstrate your competency, those post-nominals. And also you get to be part of a professional institution. And I'm going to talk more about the main benefits from the IMechE perspective. Benefits, these are the key benefits that I find from my institute, but there are quite a lot more. But the library service is really important, and it's probably more so important. It's more important now than ever because Serica don't have an online library like we had at BP, but this is probably, it's just the same, I think. But there's a huge online selection of textbooks, not just technical books, but like self-development books as well, that you can download electronically and read online. They also have the largest collection of engineering books globally, they claim, and these are free to use, and you can request them and they'll post them to you next day. So it's helped me out quite a few times. And recently doing the an FTA on the fixed firewall system, I managed to get hold of a couple of good books through their service, so it is quite valuable. There's a lot of training and e-learning available through the IMechE. Some of it is free, some of it is free webinars, but there are a lot of proper development courses from 1 day to several days long. You get issued the Professional Engineering magazine. You get the invites to all the lectures that they do. There's lectures up and down the country, but everything's broken down to region. The Aberdeen area is quite active, or it was before the pandemic struck. But there's usually a lecture every month or so, and it's really useful. A lot of them are oil and gas related, so I've learned quite a bit from just going to lectures. There's quite a number of site visits available as well. The one on the photo here was the National Hyperbaric Centre, which was a really good visit. And the IMechE offers a lot of support. They offer you support through the process, from where you are now to what you need to do and helping you get to where you want to be. But there's also other support that they offer, like financial support, and there's all these other benefits, and it's too much to go through. So I'm going to go through this is an overview of the membership levels and the routes to get there. It all starts off with affiliate members, and there's affiliate members for apprentices, students, and for non-engineers. So people like buyers or technical assistants can actually get involved too. If you're a student and then you graduate, you become an associate member. Yeah. So in the blue box, when you are professionally registered, there's 3 levels of membership: Eng Tech, which is engineering technician; iEng, which is incorporated engineer; and CEng, which is a chartered engineer. If you reach any of those levels, you can then progress to become a fellow of the institute. The route that I took was student, affiliate. I became an associate, and then I jumped between what do I do here, and you'll look back to the companies I've been at. I did go to a couple of different companies, and I was never on any proper development scheme. That was never in place, or I was too old to get on any of those schemes when by the time I joined. So I did a lot of it off my own, well, most of it off my own back. I did start doing the iEng route, because the IMechE thought it would be the right way for me to go. So I did start doing that, and I joined BP. BP got in touch with me, so I never planned on moving, but I just did. And by the time I joined BP, they never recognised iEng membership at all, and they encouraged me to go to CEng. So I just stopped what I was doing and then started concentrating on CEng. So it took, looking back, I think it took quite a bit longer to do that. And in hindsight, I wish I did just complete doing the iEng and then do the CEng, because I think it would have been more structured, and I would have got it done quicker. So the Engineering Council sets out the competencies required for whatever level you're going for. The Engineering Council is a central body, and it puts out this document called the UK Spec, and this is what all the institutions need to follow for the level you're going for. So I've put on a few of the institutions there. These are the most common ones that I've came across, but there are a host of other ones. But typically, these are the ones you'll find in the oil and gas industry. And they all have their own individual processes. I mean, Alistair touched on doing exams for some of the structural ones, but for IMechE, there was no exams for the route that I took. This is an overview. This is the most wordy slide as well. This is an overview of what the UK spec lays out. It's broken down into 5 competence areas, A to E. So A is knowledge and understanding, and B is practical application. C is leadership skills, D is communication and interpersonal skills, and then E is professional conduct. The A and B is probably the more difficult ones to get evidence for. They are the more technical ones, and the C, D, and E are, I guess, softer skills. And a lot of these can be picked up just during your experience, your working experience in doing your job. But knowledge and understanding, this is probably the harder one to demonstrate. And certainly for me, it was one of the more trickier areas, which I'll talk about more. So to become professionally registered, there's like three sort of key things here. One is the knowledge and understanding. You need to be at the right level of knowledge and understanding to apply for the level you're going for. And that can be done by academic qualifications. So just like standard degrees or first degrees, and then masters, MScs and such like. But also just courses, technical courses, they all count as well. And it's got CLA here, which is Career Learning Assessment, and this is the route that I went through. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. That basically looks at what I've done through my career and take credit for my learning, doing my job, to meet that level of knowledge and understanding. The next part is competence development. They say it takes 3 to 4 years after you graduate to get that competence, but it isn't a hard rule. It really depends on what you're exposed to and the work that you actually do. And then the professional review. This is the last part, which I've just went through and completed in the last 6 months. You submit your application, and then you do a professional review interview. It says interview, but it was the most, I guess, enjoyable interview I've been at. It was more like a conversation talking about my job. Knowledge and understanding. So these are the 3 membership levels, and this is typically what the qualifications are to apply for that membership. So I was a BEng honours degree, and which sort of exceeds what you need for IEng. So I was in the middle of the road. So that's why I wasn't quite sure which way to go for a little bit. But I had to do this period of further learning, and that just involved training courses, just the lectures that I went to, and actually like technical books that I read, and events that I attended. I had to record all of those to demonstrate that, and you had to submit basically like a really detailed CV with all the development that you had done, and they review it to see if you are right for this route or no. So they did that review for me, and this is the way that for IEng, you're looking at a BEng degree or a BSc plus, and they call it 3 years of initial professional development. So that's basically what you're looking at there. I guess the quickest way to get chartered is to have a master's degree, because that meets the level of knowledge and understanding, and you just need that 4 years of development, and it seems to tick most of the boxes. But you can get incorporated with having an HNC and an HND. And I know some people who have just got an HND and they became chartered doing this further learning. So this isn't a hard rule set. There are ways for each individual. An overview of my journey. I graduated with a BEng honours degree. I had to do a period of further learning and initial professional development, and I gathered all of that just doing my job and recording what I did, and the courses that was available through the companies that I was at. The career learning assessment. So this was a bit that I found quite tricky. This is all about demonstrating knowledge and understanding. It's like writing a technical paper for university. Basically, I found it quite difficult to write about myself and the good things that I had done. I'm not usually used to writing in first person or saying what I actually did I don't normally write like that on a daily basis, so it's quite tricky to do. And also writing about analysis and doing calculations, it's quite hard to put it into writing. I find it a lot easier just if it was a calculation, it would have been quite a bit easier. So I didn't find it a really easy route to do, but at the end of it, I did actually feel like I learned a lot about myself and came out a better engineer than I was. And then the final part was the CEng application. Once the IMechE was happy with this, you just fill out this application piece here. There's five sections on it, which cover the 5 competencies, A, B, C, D, and E, and you just need to write about that. It's quite straightforward, to be quite honest. The hard thing is keeping your word count within the requirements. I think you're limited to about 400 words per section, so it's really tricky to get your word count down and to cover everything they're asking for. And I'm just going to show through some events that I've attended with IMechE. There is a lot that goes on. I find it quite enjoyable going to a lot of these things. So there was a visit to the National Hyperbaric Centre. This is a fabricator for scythes who make the majority of the copper stills for the whiskey industry, but they also do stuff for oil and gas as well. This is some spools that they do for the oil and gas, and a lot of these events were all free. This was the one for the Sparrows up at the Tirebagger Quarry. I found this really useful, and I've since went back to it again, which has really helped in the current role that I do. And there are a lot of social events as well, and this one in particular, which isn't carried out anymore, but the Luca Rare show. So there is an awful lot goes on within the institution, and there's just way too much to cover in this lunch and learn. But hopefully it'll give you a bit of a flavour for what goes on, and you can ask some questions at the end. I guess the next steps I think I would advise people on is if you go to the institution for your discipline and look out for the events. I mean, this is the IMechE one, and they've got lots of events on introductions to EngTech, how to get chartered, and applications workshops. It goes into a lot more detail than what I've just covered. So I think that would be the next step for people who are interested. But I'm free to take any questions and that on it. So get in touch if you feel you want to. So I think that takes me to the end of my slides. And next we've got Andy Wood and then Craig Hodgson to talk through their part.
I quickly edited my slide to show CEng MIMechE after you prompted me there, Bruce. Thank you. Yeah, I'll go through a brief overview of my journey. I'll be relatively quick given time, and then a little bit about how I found being chartered, etc., and answer that question, which was, is it worth it? Spoiler, it is. So just my background, started off down in the bottom left, went to Strathclyde Uni in Glasgow, and then just kept going right and up. So a little bit more direct, I guess, than Bruce, and the fact that I went to Strathclyde straight out of school, and I did a recognised master's degree course with the IMechE. Something that I think is worth mentioning if you are looking to go to university, or maybe your kids are looking to go. It's worth bearing in mind that some degree courses aren't recognised or accredited, and that doesn't mean that they're bad degree courses by any means. It just means it's maybe a little more difficult in the future if you are looking to get registered or recognised rather. So thankfully, sort of lucked out, and I had chosen one that was. Following university, I joined a graduate scheme with Total, and again that was accredited with the institute, which was pretty useful. So it meant that they knew what the scheme was, how it operated, and it just meant that you were sort of slotting into something that was recognised by the body that was going to eventually provide you with professional registration, or hopefully. I was also assigned a mentor, and it was pretty well ran, and I had a pretty good mentor. which makes a big difference, to be honest. Another thing to bear in mind, if your mentor's obviously got a lot of other things to do, and if you need reports looked at, etc., then it can be difficult to get things through. Thankfully, as I said, mine was pretty good. So I gained Chartership in 2016. So I sort of followed one of the paths that Bruce put on there. It was relatively direct, having the degree course and then straight through. I'd like to say that was through my own excellent ability, but just happened to make some good decisions, and having things set up makes life so much easier. So I followed what was called the Monitored Professional Development Scheme with the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. So you do a quarterly report every quarter, and then a final report, and you do that for 4 years. And then you have a final report, an interview, and I think similar to what Bruce was saying, it was a pretty easy interview. It's a chat. You've done all the work. It's basically saying that you are the person that's submitted the forms, and you roughly know what you're talking about. The people that were interviewing me didn't know much about the subject, if I'm honest. Mechanical engineering is a pretty broad thing, so they were just trying to make sure that you had done what you'd said. So it was pretty straightforward. So a bit about my journey. We'll start off with the good. It was very structured, as you could probably tell. Quarterly reports. You work through. It sounds a lot easier than what Bruce did, which was great. So it's straightforward in terms of I didn't have a sort of technician to degree to engineering sort of route that made it a little less obvious. Again, going back to you, Bruce, it's I can understand that might have been difficult. I just did what the next thing in the path. The Institute has a very good website. That might sound trivial, but when you're trying to submit forms, are you needing them checked by your mentor? Have they been checked? It can be difficult if you don't have a good interface, if you're doing everything by paper or otherwise. Whereas I found the system pretty useful and neat, and kept things up to date and all your evidence in one place rather than across files and in folders and stuff. Another good thing about my sort of route was that when you're a graduate, you're putting every course going. You get all sorts of, keep you busy in certain senses, but that makes for good evidence, which means that it's easy to, you're not just on job stuff. You get the ability to write reports, and your manager will give you time to do so, which all helped. The bad. So I'm obviously an advocate for professional registration. That's what I'm here for. But I'm going to be honest. There was a lot of reporting. I felt as if I could. Bruce, you said that you struggled to write in the sort of first person. By the end of it, I felt as if that was all I had done for 4 years. I had just written about how I had demonstrated this and how it made me very competent at doing it. But on the other hand, I felt a little bit that I was maybe ticking boxes, and going back to something that Alistair said about competency and feeling as if you were, good enough. You kind of feel as if you're doing the system rather than, am I actually the professional engineer that I'm saying that I am? I'd say those are minor points. So in terms of takeaways, I think organisation, it's key. That makes such a difference if you're trying to do this without, a scattered-brained approach. It's going to hurt you. You more than likely are competent. You more than likely are, if you're thinking about going for this, it's just proving it to someone else. So being organised helps, and that leads on to saving files and reports. So if you've got stuff and you've maybe moved company, etc., you have to kind of keep this stuff with you and realise that you have to evidence everything. So just keeping that stuff if you can do so. Obviously, some things are confidential, etc., but that makes a huge difference. Bit of a cliche, but it does take a bit of time. My route was pretty straightforward, but it was lengthy. It was 4 years of reporting. Perhaps you're at a point where you're competent, or you've been working in the industry for a while, in which case it's maybe just some evidence written up in an application. Nonetheless, these things tend to take a bit of time. Another takeaway that hopefully you'll get from this is that I'm happy to mentor. I have certain, it's not something I've done fully before in the past, but I have helped and been signatories on applications and read reports and edited them, etc., for people, and I'm happy to do so. the onus is on the person applying. But and I guess the final question, is it worth it? Yes, I think it is. I think Bruce did a really good job of demonstrating that. I think I would just like to add my point, having been registered for 4 years, it definitely is. I think when you're applying for jobs, I know in my story it's been useful in that regard. Whether it's earned me more money, I'm not sure. But I think it does. I think it does carry weight. If I was employing someone and there was two good candidates, one who was chartered or incorporated or otherwise, then I think I would look at that favourably. And I think it's a matter of professional pride. I still use the IMechE portal for my continual professional development, and I think it's something that it's my career. It's something that I wish to say that I'm good at, and this allows me to do so. Drop me an email or get in touch. I realise that these forums can be quite difficult to raise questions, but I'm more than happy to answer them one-on-one sort of thing. So that's me. Thank you.
So Andy's actually touched on a lot of some of the points I was going to make, which was just around the structured way. The traditional way, I guess, is with the big oil majors, I guess, is the way they're doing it now, which is the MPDS program. So that's the way I got chartered, which I think worked for me. Having listened to your story and Alistair's story, it certainly worked for me, because I think the 5,000-page report that Alistair talked about, I think I'd still be doing that now, to be honest. But yeah, so I've been chartered for 10 years actually. That was just over the 4 years from joining BP, which was straight out of university with a master's degree. And I guess the driver for it at the time was just what you were expected to do in order to attain promotion to the next level, which is sort of a professional engineering status within the company. You were sort of expected to get the chartership before you would even be considered for the next grade. So that was sort of the selfish reason for doing it. I guess wider than that, though, it's good in that it gives you the external recognition. So it's not just the company you're working for, who obviously have a bit of self-interest to I guess make your CV look good, but also it's an external body who's recognising it. It's the IMechE and it's the Engineering Council. I should have said at the start, I'm obviously through the IMechE rather than any other institute, although there are quite a lot of options out there. It looks good on your CV. So if I was ever in a position where I wanted to leave the company I was working for, then I think that helps the situation. It's internationally recognised. The UK's Engineering Council is probably one of the most sort of preferred councils out there, engineering councils across the globe. So that stands in good stead if you ever wanted to look elsewhere, but I'm sure that's not what this forum is all about. It was probably also that it would have been a prerequisite for my move to Bruce. So I started with BP and chemicals down in Hull and joined the Bruce team, Matt Neal's Bruce Ace team in 2011. And that was as you classed an H grade role at the time, which was a prerequisite that you were a chartered engineer. I think the company as well, and pretty much other companies out there might be able to put this better than me, but there is a bit around when you have chartered individuals or professionally registered individuals in critical roles. There's a bit of due diligence there by the company, saying that there is an external body has recognised that, more than just sort of just a degree and a bit of in-role experience. You've independently gone out and got verified to be up to the status of being professionally registered. I've also put a bit about mentoring. Andy touched on it there. So I've mentored, I think, 3 BP individuals through the monitored professional development scheme, as well as Andy touched on just supporting the odd application with second signatories, reviewing their application, even some out with the IMechE as well. So the IET, I think, was one of the ones that I've supported. So a little bit of experience there, and happy to help if anybody's keen. That was my whistle-stop tour, but I think overall, absolutely the right thing to do. If you've got the sort of the prerequisites that the IMechE or the institute require, why wouldn't you? You're going to get a lot of experience on the job as you go. So make sure you record that. Make sure you or you write it all up at the end, which is probably the most difficult part of it all, to be honest. But you should get out there and you should try and get some external recognition for all the effort you've put in. I mean, it took me pretty much 10 years from leaving school to be chartered. So you want that recognition, and as I say, it should stand you in good stead down the line for internal or external opportunities.
Excellent. Yeah, Craig, thanks very much for that. So that brings us on to our final speaker, which is Mike.
So, I mean, mine will just be a quick summary. So you'll see the note and thing about 200 words. So I've been a chartered engineer for a while. I try to count how many years it is.
So 20 years, Mike?
It's a while, Matt. It's a while. And I can still relate to some of what Alistair was saying and what Bruce was saying and all the rest of it. To become, so what, I'm now due to write my application for fellowship, and to become a fellow, and I'm a chemical engineer, so the fellow of the Institution of Chemical Engineers, you have to be nominated, effectively have two sponsors, one of which who has to be a fellow. And part of the reason I didn't go forward was because I didn't think I knew any fellows, and then I found out that I knew lots. And the more important one was I used to read the criteria and think, well, I don't meet that, because it's all about what have you done for the institution, what you've done to promote chemical engineering and all the rest of it. In actual fact, when you get to the job that I'm in, but in similar jobs, there's a huge amount of stuff. And I found going to the institution and speaking to them and speaking to a couple of people who were already fellows and kind of going, I really don't think I've got the experience that meets this criteria. And they just laughed at me and went, what, doing the job you're doing and you don't think you qualify? And so the 200 words comes because I actually sat down with a friend who was a fellow, and to become a fellow, I literally have to be nominated by two people, and I have to write a 500 words in total submission covering 3 subjects. And as Bruce says, it's really hard to slim down the amount of words to cover what you want to cover in that few words. And we wrote 300 in a pub one night just to cover the basic subjects, and I literally have to flesh it out, and that will be sufficient. But the reason I put it off for so many years was because I just didn't think I had enough experience. I felt I could do it, and when I looked at some other fellows, I felt I was comparable in terms of knowledge and experience. But I read the criteria, and I read it really harshly, and they sat down and went, "Nah, come on, you do that, you do that, you do that." So I guess the one thing I would say is, rather than assume that, go and speak to people who've offered, like Craig and Andy and all the rest of it, about how they've got through chartership, because you probably actually have a lot more experience than you already realise, and you'll already be a lot of the way towards it. Craig touched on why it's important. I do think it's really important. There are certain roles that we would like, in BP it was a mandate, and in Serica I would still have a comfort factor that certain roles are classed as safety critical. So the most important safety critical role that we have, OIM, you have to have an external qualification that's independently assessed for us to appoint someone as an OIM, as Craig knows. But for certain engineering roles onshore, we would want that independent assessment, so that when, God forbid, we end up in a situation where there's something happened, and it's like, were you happy that this person could make that decision? You've got that independent verification that this person is a competent engineer and is capable of making those kind of judgments. And it's not me, Mike Collina, saying it because I like them. It's an independent body that has the only skin in the game they have is proving that that person is a competent engineer, because it's that institution's reputation, if they're not, gives that independence. That means it's a very, very strong verification of the capability of that individual. And so that's why I will always support people going for chartership, because that independence helps you demonstrate the qualities that we know you have, but it gives an external tick in the box that says, yeah, we agree with you, we think they're good too. So I will write my 200 words and I will get it submitted, and this has prompted me to do that. I've had a few people in lockdown say, have you written your fellowship yet? So I need to get on with that one.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Yeah, Mike he touched on a couple of things there that I never said much about, but some of the I guess the softer skills, which I did say, is promoting your institution. How do you do that? One of the things that I did was volunteer with the young members panel, and the young member bit, it just means you don't have to be a certain age. It's up to 10 years after you graduate. So I helped lead the Aberdeen panel for quite some time, and all of those events that I showed, those were all events that we organised and I was part of. So getting involved with the panels in your area can help give you that evidence that you need. I got into it with quite a few of my friends, so it became quite a routine thing, doing things for the IMechE, and I spent an awful lot of time doing things for other people instead of myself, and that's one of my, reasons why I didn't, focus on myself for a bit. And one thing Mike was talking about there is having that assurance on the engineer's competence. As a chartered engineer and incorporated, you need to follow the institution's code of conduct. It's quite similar to Serica's one, to be honest. So, which is great. It made the questions on it quite easy. But you've got a code of conduct that you must adhere to. So that relates to what Mike was talking about. So that takes us to the end of all our speakers. We've still got a few minutes left. We did intend having a question and answer session. So I guess if anybody's got any questions that they want to raise straight off, please, you could use the raise the hand feature on Teams, and we can try and help with that. And Clara, have you anything else to add that we haven't covered?
Is Rachel on the line at all?
Hi, Clara. Yes, I am.
Hey, Rachel.
Rachel, if this is any burning questions, do you want to just say a couple of things about sort of Serica's training program for staff and sort of the option for mentoring?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously a couple of the guys there have touched on mentoring, and it's great to hear that there's a few people who are mentors within Serica. There's lots of informal mentoring going on. I'm aware that there's a few people who perhaps, haven't been a mentor before, but might be interested in that. And same in terms of actually, being a mentee and having a mentor. So Christine and myself at the moment are pulling together a pack, all with information about mentoring, the responsibilities of a mentee and a mentor. So if anyone wants some more information on that, then please feel free to drop myself or Christine a note, and we can share that with you and run through that with you as well. Just in terms of kind of further education as well. So you'll all be aware there's the AIS portal for training and competence that's linked to every role within the company. But Serica are committed to development as well, and we do have our further education policy. So perhaps if there's any training or courses that are available that employees want to perhaps pursue, that's not necessarily mandatory for your role and maybe takes you into a bit of a different kind of career path, then please speak to your line managers in the first instance to kind of talk through that in terms of development. And we do have a form to fill out, which is on the BMS, the further education training form, and we can point in the right direction if anyone is looking for more information on that. And what we have as well is a training committee that meets on a monthly basis, which is HR and with Mike. So we basically discuss at those meetings just training in general for the company, and also review any of the further training requests that have come in for employees as well, just to see if hopefully we can support that as well. So it's something to definitely be aware of that's available. And as I say, it's something that for some people might be of interest for personal and professional development as well.
Great. I think Neil Spence has a question.
Yeah, Clara, thank you very much, everyone, for presenting. It really is interesting. But one of the key things that I think we haven't really touched upon is family and children, is because, as you say, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I think you need wholehearted support from your partner, your children, etc. And it's just something that I think we should all recognise, is that the part that they play in supporting you to go through your chartership.
That's a really good point, Neil. I think I think my wife deserves a mention. Like I probably wouldn't have got this done if it wasn't for her support and constant pushing. So aye, good point.
And we've got Scott Duffy.
Yes, yeah, thanks for that. It was very insightful. Bruce, got a bit of a question for you. You mentioned you started on the iEng before kind of dropping that, then going on the CEng. So I guess where I'm at now, I'm kind of halfway through my degree. Already now got the HND section, I suppose. Say you've got the iEng, what sort of process is it to then kind of upgrade that as you kind of progress with your uni? Or like, what I'm trying to say is it worth doing it that way, or is it worth just kind of holding off and finishing the degree and then going for it?
I think I would say my advice is I would certainly do the iEng first before going through the CEng part. I think one of the questions is what level of degree are you doing? If you're going to come out with a master's degree at the end of it, Scott, it might be easier just to wait until you've finished and do the master's application, so the CEng application with your master's degree. But if you're coming out with a BEng honours degree like myself, I'd recommend you do the iEng and then progress to the CEng. Part of the iEng application, you need to have what they call is your development plan. What your development plan is for like near term, mid term, and long term. So I guess it would be expected in there that you would put down ultimately you want to become chartered, and putting down that plan in place and agreeing that with IMechE makes it a lot easier and more structured to go for chartership. And that's a bit that I didn't have. And in hindsight, I wish I did do the iEng first before I went to CEng.
Brilliant. No, cheers for that.
And now Musa Mohammed, do you have a question?
No question, but just only a comment. Thanks for a very good update. It reminds me, what I was doing 8 years ago to get my chartership. I think the main drive, like 10 or 8 years ago, 8 or 10 years ago, was the Macondo accident. And after that, most of the big companies, they were looking for chartered engineer in their staff so that they can prove that they've got a certain level of competencies to approve the designs or to approve any new processes or anything. So that was, I think, one of the main drive few years ago. But I would say actually I spent only 7 to 8 months to get my chartership. When I started and when I get my certificate. Just one comment that if anybody is planning to do or getting a chartered engineership, just spend 1 hour every week and just follow religiously on that schedule, so that after a few months or few weeks you will realize that you have already covered a lot of part required for the report or anything. So that's the only comment.
Yeah, I kind of echo that, Musa. I gave up volunteering with the young members panel, and I spent that time working on myself, and that's how I got through it as well.
Yeah.
Just dedicating time and sticking to it. Okay, well, I know asking questions in front of the whole audience can be a bit daunting, but please feel free to get in touch. Certainly for IMechE side of things, I've got some good contacts there. I actually got a presentation from the IMechE yesterday just on how just the get chartered process. It covers more detail than what I went into today, but if it is something that you're looking at, I do have quite a lot of material that I can share, and I might answer a lot of your questions.
Thanks, Bruce, and everyone else in the Education Committee. I think it was a really worthwhile lunch and learn, and we'll make sure this recording's available so anyone that's missed it, they can see it as well.
Yeah, it was very good, everybody. Thanks for all the personal insights from the 4 speakers. I think great to see so many engineers on the call, but conscious it's wider than that. But thanks, everybody.